Now, let's take a look at one set of leadership theories, and it's covered some in the materials. I want to look at Fred Fielder's contingency theory. And he came up with that in the latter half of the 1960s, I'm pretty sure. And this believes where the leadership, in a situational leadership style, the successful leader is one who adapts his or her style to the circumstances around them. Fielder believes that, or believe, not believes that there are two key types there's two types of a leader: the task-oriented leader and the people-oriented leader. According to the contingency theory, the elements that would affect the effectiveness of a leader are basically how clearly defined and structured the job scope is, how much positional power the leader has, the relationship between the leader and those working around him, for him, and so forth, or her. Fielder thought the most favorable situation for a high level of achievement is clearly defined job scope. It's positional power and a good relationship between leaders and followers. A high positional power means that the leader stands clearly above everyone else and is recognized as the final voice in any issue. All members are willing to submit themselves to this leader. Fielder found that the task-oriented task-oriented leaders are more effective in extremely favorable and unfavorable or unfavorable situations, whereas relationship-oriented leaders will perform best in intermediate situations. Now, the idea of applying the contingency theory, that's a little tough. Fielder pointed out 3 points that made a leader effective, and you have some learning points there. First of all, how clearly defined and structured is the job scope? That's important to know. What is it that we're doing, and how clearly instructions are given is very important to your team's effectiveness. People's motivation to complete a task increases once the tasks are well defined and specific. This you see in the regular classroom with the children. When the children understand the final goal, the final end task that they have to accomplish, then they're much more apt to work towards that task because they have a clear view of what is needed. By setting expectations straight, your team is able to know if they have achieved their target simply by checking their complete task against your list of expectations for that particular task, basically a job rubric. However, a lot of managers and bosses often give very vague instructions. That's not good leadership. They do it out of fear of losing their own position. Someone may take over. For example, write a report about a current economic situation and how it relates to the business. Some kind of a statement like that. And it's very vague, and someone who hears it is likely to be frustrated by the lack of how specific and the clarity of what he or she is required to do. The project is not scoped. This will lead to frustration, and this leader causes an uneasiness amongst his people because of it. The leader could have prevented all of these things and had a higher level of productivity for his team had he given it clear instructions. How much positional power the leader has. That's another question. Positional power, it talks about the perceived power distance between the leader and those that he's in charge of, or he or she's in charge of. How clearly is a leader perceived as the head of the group? Do we know that's the administrative head, that's the principal, and does that principal come across as such? This is important. You as an assistant principal or as an assistant director have your leadership positions, but is there a distinct difference between the two? Are his instructions and directives final? Can they be challenged? That's something we deal with. In Western culture, leadership tends to take on a more democratic form, where feedback is obtained and what the team says matters as much as the leader. In the Asian cultures, however, the leader is seen as king. What he says is the final, and his decisions are not questions. And questioning a leader's decision may be seen upon as rebellion, insubordination, even undutiful in some extreme cases. It is likely that that a high positional power leads to a greater productivity, as there is only one mind leading the team with a singular vision. It is more likely that the team will be more efficient. However, some may argue that a diversity of views leads to a synergy and better ideas. Studies have proven pretty conclusive about such facts, as they may also lead to a groupthink or division. The relationship between leaders and followers, that's a big question, how that works, you know. Coupled with high positional power is also a willingness to build a relationship with the team. People will work more effectively if their leader is someone that they like and trust, and so it is important that you learn to develop the effective communication skills. As you know, I've said in the introduction and earlier, I've spoken to it quite a bit. I have a distinct understanding that when in a multicultural society, and you're dealing with groups of people from, with 10 different languages or 150 different languages and different cultures, that communication is so important. And the leader needs, again, when it has to have an empathic view of the cultures that are within his organization, and how they perceive his or her actions, and this all goes to communication skills. Above all, Fiedler speaks of adaptation of leadership styles. There is no one-size-fits-all leadership. The best leaders are adaptable and will adjust themselves according to situations. As I've mentioned before, you can be one way in the morning, or you can have in the classroom or in the schoolhouse or in a major organization. How you are being perceived in the morning and your actions are going to be very different in the afternoon, especially, and we see that in all types of organizations and business. The Monday, Friday thing, never buy a car on Monday or Fridays, kind of thing. So you have to take into account that in the same situation, same place, same everything, just the time of day or time of year could easily change how you're perceived, and your leadership style may have to adapt in that period to maintain, your end results, the vision, the organizational objectives. There is a time for task-oriented directive leadership, and there is a time for people-oriented democratic leadership. The key really is to learn which way to go.